What's up, peeps? We're back. As always, I'm your host, Lee Benson. Thank you so much for joining us for our YouTube edition of the AEW Insider. This is part one of a four-part series that I'm bringing to you guys. You know I love video games. You know I love action figures, movies, wrestling, what have you. But I'm in a little bit of a nostalgia type feeling, so I decided to do my top 40 NES games of all time. There's going to be some games on this list you're going to be like, oh my God, it brings me back. Oh my God, I forgot about that. Oh my God, that game was so hard, I wanted to pull my fucking hair out. This list is going to be awesome. You might not agree with anything, but that is supposed to happen because it's my top 40 games and not yours. So let's get to the show. Number 40, Excitebike, 1984. Race by yourself against the clock or compete with other motocross riders on 5 tracks full of long straights, large jumps, and obstacles to win the Excitebike Championship. You can create your own tracks by placing jumps and obstacles of all different sizes and shapes on the track and choosing how many laps each race will have. Then race against the clock or other riders to see how your track fares in the competition. A fun fact about Excitebike is, in the original Famicom version, it is possible to save level designs through the use of the Famicom data recorder. It does save game data onto a video cassette. However, this accessory was only released in Japan, so non-Japanese players couldn't save their designs, despite the game's manual saying that the save and load functions had been programmed in for potential product developments. The Virtual Console versions finally allow players to save their level designs. And I can't even tell you guys how painstaking it was to create a perfect track or just a difficult track in general, and as soon as you shut your NES off, it was gone. Number 39, Ghosts and Goblins, 1986. Arthur the Brave Knight must rescue his beloved princess from the Demon King, Astaroth, and his evil forces. Amongst them are various undead ghosts, zombies, ogres, and goblins. Other challenges include moving platforms, ladders, and water and fire hazards. Now this game was great, but it was very hard, which you're going to hear a lot on this list. To me, out of any system ever made to date, the NES had the hardest games out of all of them. In this game, Arthur, aka you, would start out in a suit of armor. As you took damage, it would fly off and you were running around in your boxers, which was always a good laugh. A fun fact about Ghosts and Goblins is, according to the publisher Capcom, Ghosts and Goblins has sold over 1.64 million copies worldwide since its initial release as of June of 2016. Number 38, Ikari Warriors, 1987. Ikari Warriors is a vertically scrolling run-and-gun shoot-'em-up arcade game developed by SNK. It was published in North America and Europe by TradeWest, and it was released in 1986. Originally titled Ikari, which means Fury in Japan, the player takes the role of commando-like warriors, who were Ralph, and he wore red, and Clark, who wore blue. They must try to reach the village of Ikari. Enemy units are attempting to kill the player, including tanks, enemies, and helicopters. A number of power-ups along the way help the player achieve victory. Now, this was a great co-op game to play over and over and try to beat with your buddy. It did produce many sequels, like Ikari Warriors 2 Victory Road and Part 3. A fun fact about Ikari Warriors is, the game was actually a follow-up to an earlier game called TMNT 3. Which Ralph battled enemies inside of a tank. Number 37, Chip 'n Dale's Rescue Rangers Part 2, 1994. The Rescue Rangers catch a news report that a bomb is set to go off at a restaurant. Chip and Dale set off on an adventure to defuse the bomb and find Fat Cat, who just escaped from prison. Now this was another two-player fun co-op game, and I have to say from this point on, all Disney games of this era, and it even transferred over to the Super Nintendo, were super hard, which includes Aladdin, The Lion King, and so many more. They would legit have you whipping your controllers off the walls, which I am proud to say I have never done. I do not come from a family of money, so there was no way I was going to smash anything that I was lucky to get as a child. A fun fact about Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers 2 is, this sequel for the NES came out when Super Nintendo was actually getting very popular. So if you actually still had this copy, which I did, but I don't have anymore, it would be one of the more rare and expensive games that there are out there. Number 36, Kung Fu, 1988. You'll need lightning-fast reactions to knock out the knife thrower, stop the stick fighter, and trip up the evil Tom Tom brothers in this action-packed martial arts contest. Are you sure you're tough enough? Because it'll take all your strength and skill to master the moves in Kung Fu. Beat your opponents and rescue the fair Sylvia, who's held captive on the top floor. The action is non-stop, and just when you think you got your enemies licked, there's always a giant, a snake, or fire-breathing dragon to contend with in Kung Fu. This game definitely borrowed heavily from Bruce Lee's movie Enter the Dragon, and it had a great mix of enemies for its time, and it was so fun to play. A fun fact about Kung Fu is, even though it is an adaptation of the arcade game Kung Fu Master, Nintendo was required to shorten the title to Kung Fu since Data East owned the rights of the game outside of Japan. Number 35, Nightmare on Elm Street, 1989. A Nightmare on Elm Street for the NES was loosely based on the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. The player takes control of an ordinary teenager, and he can actually be joined up to 3 other players with the use of the NES 4-score. The objective is to scour the vicinity of Elm Street, collect the bones of the supernatural serial killer Freddy Krueger, and dispose of them in a local high school's furnace. Now, a fun fact for Nightmare on Elm Street is, it was one of the first games that you could actually use the NES add-on 4-player adapter for. Not a lot of games at that time took use of that great adapter. Number 34, California Games, 1987. It is a 1987 epic sports video game. It was originally released for the Apple II and Commodore 64. It was ported over to other home computers and many video game consoles. Branching from their popular summer and winter game series, this game consists of a collection of outdoor sports popular in California. The game was successful for Epics and spawned a sequel. In this game, they actually let you choose a sponsor before you start it, which was really cool. You get to pick from the likes of like Ocean Pacific, Santa Cruz, Kawasaki, and even Milton Bradley themselves. And they had some cool events like skateboarding a half pipe in front of the Hollywood sign, surfing, roller skating on the boardwalk, and even hacky sack. The replay value was high and it was super fun to play with friends. A fun fact about California Games is, in the surfing game, there was a very rare chance that after the player falls off their board into the water, a shark will appear and the Jaws theme will play. Number 33, Wizards and Warriors, 1987. The evil wizard Malkill has gone mad and started using his magic for evil. Brave Knight Kuros is summoned to venture through the deep forest of Elrond. This game was really cool. It had you exploring dungeons, castles, and you even took to the trees for certain levels. It had great enemy and boss designs, and it also, for myself, had a very high replay value. A fun fact about Wizards and Warriors is, a lot of people do not remember this game, or they actually do mistake it for its follow-up sequels, which were Iron Sword Wizards and Warriors 2 and Wizards and Warriors 3 Kuros, as well as a Game Boy sequel, Wizards and Warriors X, The Fortress of Fear. This was definitely an NES sleeper hit. It was the production company Rare's second game they ever made for the NES. Number 32. TMNT, 1989. The Ninja Turtles, Leonardo, Raphael, Michelangelo, and Donatello are on a mission to retrieve the Life Transformer gun from Shredder, a device that could restore their sensei Splinter back to his human form. Now, this was a great side-scrolling platform, but it also did above the action, too, when you were actually looking down on what was going on. That mostly happened in the driving scenes. You actually got to drive the Turtle Van, aka the Party Wagon, and you took to the sewers, the city, underwater, and even the dreaded Technodrome, to take on the likes of Foot Soldiers, Bebop Rocksteady, and more. And legit, this is number 2 on my list for the hardest Nintendo games ever. There is only one that I found harder, and we will get to that game at some point later on the list. Sequels were made and they were great, but they were nowhere as near as hard as this one was. On to some honorable mentions. First up, Gogol 13. Top Secret Episode, 1988. Gogol or Gogol's mission is to obtain a vaccine and destroy the leader of a top secret government group. Now this game was really cool. At times the game could be very, very dialogue heavy, but it always was intriguing. It was a side scroller, but at times it would switch the modes to sniping or shooting. So you could take out an enemy from a distance, or you would just have to shoot a bunch with a bunch of crosshairs. So the game was definitely ahead of its time. You play a secret agent, he's a pimp. He's macking chicks, he's sleeping with them, he's breaking people's necks, he doesn't fuck around. This definitely was one that people passed up, but it did become a cult classic. A fun fact about this game is that the missions are actually named after classic films. If you don't know what I mean, definitely go back and give it a look. And our final honorable mention for this part of the list is The Simpsons. Bart vs. the Space Mutants, 1991. Aliens have invaded Springfield, and it is up to Bart to stop their evil plan. Armed with your trusty slingshot, skateboard, x-ray glasses, and spray paint, you, aka Bart, try to save the ungrateful town of Springfield and your family from killer aliens. All the popular spots in Springfield were included, plus your favorite characters from the show. This is another one on my list that was super hard. It sold a boatload of companies, but was hated by many due to the difficulty and the controls. And finally, for this part of the list, number 31, Rygar, 1987. The evil being Rygar has taken over the land of our Gogol, and Rygar, a dead warrior who has risen from the grave, must use his Discomore, along with a variety of other weapons to stop him. Your shield was on a chain, and you could thrust it at enemies and you could retrieve it, and also would help you get across waters or chasms. A fun fact about Rygar is, in the original Japanese translation, Rygar was the name of the game's chief antagonist. However, since the kanji for the first syllable of his name can be translated as Lie or Rai, the villain's name was translated as Lygar, while the game's title remained as Rygar when it did reach the US shores. It was assumed that Rygar was the hero of the story. In the original version, the hero was referred to only as the legendary warrior. Also, they did do a remake of this game for the PlayStation, and it was legit one of the most beautiful looking games that I had ever played for the time that it came out in. And that goes for both of them, the NES version and the PlayStation remake. Now that's been happening since the beginning of time. When games do come to our shores from a different country, things always get lost in translation. A perfect example would be Street Fighter. In Street Fighter, the boxer Balrog, his name overseas was actually M. Bison, which stood for like Mike Tyson, but they used M. Bison so they couldn't get sued. And actually M. Bison's name was Balrog. When it got here, there was a mix-up, and that's what we got. But hey, it stuck and it worked. All right, peeps, I really hope you enjoyed part 1 of our 4-part series, my top 40 NES games of all time. Remember to show us some love on all major podcasting platforms, also on Facebook and YouTube under the AEW Insider, and on Twitter under the AEW Insider 1, as in the number 1. If you do want to win a Series 1 AEW Chris Jericho action figure, you have to be a subscriber to our YouTube. Besides being subscribed, pick any video including this one and like, share, and comment. So subscribe to our YouTube, like, share, and comment on any video, and boom, you're in the running to win an AEW Le Champion action figure. I will be back in a couple days or next week with part 2 of 4 of my top 40 NES games of all time. Ciao, peeps.